Tonight on the Fifth Chapter, elderly Detroit Lions owner Martha Ford steps down while her daughter Sheila replaces her. Can Sheila transform the team from the same old Lions to one of the NFL's best? A report says multiple teams are interested in signing Colin Kaepernick as a backup, and President Trump is okay with it. But will any NFL team actually sign the world's most famous anthem kneeler? And the FBI concludes there was no noose in Bubba Wallace's garage. So where does racism in NASCAR stand today? Join the conversation by commenting live on YouTube and Facebook Live. This is the Fifth Chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman.
He represents the myth by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the myth. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast, or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.
That's right, and welcome to the Fifth Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian, and we are raring and ready to go for 5 fantastic chapters here on a Tuesday. Dennis, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was hoping you would say something back, but
Oh, I thought you were gonna be like, "Hey, how you doing, Dennis?"
Oh, hey Dennis, how are you doing?
Hey, Brian. You know what? Take 10 degrees off the top of that temperature, and man, it makes all the difference in the world. Very pleasant today.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the 90s either. And it also makes it more difficult for me to sleep. I'm someone who likes to sleep during the day. I wake up at around 2:30, so the last thing I want to do is wake up in a big pool of sweat. As far as today's show is concerned, let's take a look at today's book, where you see in the second chapter, we've got a report stating that Colin Kaepernick could be on his way back to the NFL. Teams are interested, and even Donald Trump says he's okay with Kaepernick returning to the league. In the third chapter, Major League Baseball is trying to put the finishing touches on a 60-game season. Who won? The players or the owners? In the fourth chapter, it looks like that noose in Bubba Wallace's garage was a fake noose. But is the racism still real in NASCAR? And then in the fifth chapter, we've got man, woman, or child. So a big-time show for you guys. I want to thank everyone who is tuning in via YouTube or Facebook Live. Make sure that you comment on the side there. You can comment live. And, of course, if you are listening via the podcast, we thank you for doing so on Apple, Google, or Spotify. Let's now move right ahead to that first chapter, where today, out of nowhere, we entered a new era of Detroit Lions football. And I know a lot of folks out there are hoping that it's the end of same old Lions football, because Martha Ford announced today that she was stepping down as the owner of the Detroit Lions. That 94-year-old fossil is no longer leading the team. And here is some of what she had to say, some of what the new owner, Martha's daughter, Sheila Ford, had to say earlier today during a Zoom call with members of the fake news media, as narrated by 4-time Emmy Award winner Justin Rose of Channel 7.
I feel so grateful that I've had this time with her. I mean, who gets to do that with their mother? I mean, it's pretty amazing. So anyway, I've learned a lot, and I admire her style. They plan to put my own stamp on things.
There's no secret that Lions fans have been craving a winner for decades, and there's been some outcry from fans that if the team is losing, ownership doesn't seem to care. Mrs. Hamp wants you to know that is not the case.
I can absolutely guarantee you that for myself and my family, we are very upset when we lose. There's nothing that makes us more upset. We are trying our best to change this win-loss record. Main objective is to be a learner and understand, and then hopefully make intelligent decisions.
And in addition to saying that at her introductory press conference with the media, she also said that she would, quote, completely support signing Colin Kaepernick if Bob Quinn wanted him on the team. She also said that she had no plans to fire Quinn or Patricia right now. And she said, quote, "I don't want to say anything about wins or losses. We want to see major improvement." And as you saw just right there, she said that nobody hates to lose more than me and my family. That's for sure. Dennis, well, I guess we know how you think about that statement, but what do you think about this new era of Lions football under Sheila Ford Hamp?
Yeah, well, back in the day, there was a song that was called "Oh Sheila," and I always think of "Oh Sheila" when we found out that she was the kind of the right hand woman there for her mom. You know what? She must be the biggest brown noser of the family, because that's the culture of the Fords all the way through. And I don't know what Bill Ford Jr. did, but he did something to get X'd out of the picture. And Sheila's the person for the job here. Look, I think that I'm giving her a blank slate, even though I'm giving her a little bit of a rough time here coming in. Were there a couple things that she could have said stepping to the Zoom podium today? Yeah. Like, she could have been the biggest hero in Detroit sports history if she would have walked up there and said, "Look, we're going to sell the team. Let's go. We have been inept. We're the worst organization in football, in all sports. Many of you say, so we're going to sell this team." So she could have been a hero, but she wasn't going to do that. She wasn't going to fire Quinn and or Patricia today. People would have liked that, but you're not going to do that now. Maybe after the season, which I know we'll get to here. I do think that she could take Rod Wood, who got the job because he was Mrs. Ford's accountant. I think, and he said by his own admission that he didn't know anything at all about football. And, he's been less impressive than he's been more impressive. So I think going out and having a national search and finding the best minority candidate would be a real home run for Sheila Ford Hamp. I think that would be a nice move. But the one thing that I did want to hear from her today, and I know she said she's going to put her stamp on it, and she was only 4 hours on the job, but I wanted to hear that the Lions were trying to win a Super Bowl, and there was none of that. She doesn't like losing. They're trying to get way better, things like that, but nothing about a Super Bowl or winning championships. I would have liked to have seen her come out with that, but.
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, to win a Super Bowl. And, of course, she obviously knows that since 1957, the Lions have one playoff win. So, I mean, I think it would have been pretty embarrassing if she said, "I want to bring a playoff win to Detroit."
You know what? She needs to surround herself with some better people to work through, whether it's going to be news conferences or whether it's sitting down with those reporters. The case in point was when they had the big 4 or 5 reporters that come in there, and they all sat in Rod Wood's office, I think it was, and they laid out that season ticket holder letter that talked about playoff contention and all that. She could have had 4 or 5 people other than the beat reporters that could have worked for the Lions and ran that by him and said, "Hey, what do you think of this letter?" And I would think 4 or 5 people would all have been like, "No, what are you talking about? Let's not." You don't want to put this kind of you don't put that direct pressure like win or else, because then it comes down to when it comes to free agency, when it comes to the draft, you don't want to do anything like that. And there are a lot of loose sentences that were put out into that thing where the brain trust there really tripped up. She needs to do a she would do well to find some people to at least run some things by, bounce some things off before she runs out and puts out some other letter kind of like that.
So keep Quinn and Patricia and dump the PR staff.
Well, right now you're going to keep Quinn and Patricia.
Yeah.
The big question is, what's it going to take, after this season for those guys to keep their job? I don't like Rod Wood. He's a multi-millionaire. It's not like I'm saying, poor Rod Wood or anything, but he would go back to running the finances for the Ford family like he was before. There's an opening there. Make some changes. People have had enough of the worst organization here in all of sports. Do something. Put your stamp. I know. I'm going to give her some time to do that, but there's some suggestions for her.
Yeah, I really don't care what happens to Rod Wood. He's not that big of a factor in terms of winning and losing games. I'm not impressed with him, I'll say that. When he talked about how when he first got the job, he wasn't qualified to run any other team but the Detroit Lions. That was a big SOL statement. When they finally decided to get cheerleaders, and Lions fans were happy about that. And he gave the impression that he was going to get the most offbeat, fat, and ugly cheerleaders by saying, we're not going to go above and beyond. That was his quote, not above and beyond. That was a real head scratcher for me as well. But
I really liked when he came in there for the season ticket holders, and he was having a symposium, and he's like, we need a cook and we need some weight, so we're raising tickets. But hold on, we're not just going to raise the ticket prices this year. We're raising them next year too. I was thinking, who would ever, like, who did he bounce that off of? Like,
you get a ticket price increase. You get a ticket price increase. You get a ticket price increase.
Well, we're not only going to do it this year, but we're doing it next year too.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, no, what happened to Dennis? Oh, there he is.
I got so excited I dropped the camera.
Yeah. Well, look, it's a good idea for Martha Ford to step down. She's 94 years old. She can still be in the owner's box. She can sit there with her monstrous sunglasses and knit some sweaters for her great-great-great-grandchildren and eat some butterscotch. But was she helping the team win? Was she hurting the team win? Nobody knows. But I'm not going to sit here like you and give Sheila Ford Hamp this completely clean slate. I'm not going to sit here with a whole bunch of optimism. You didn't do that, but I'm sure that some are, and say that she's going to turn things around. I reacted to this the same way I reacted to all of the other big changes the Lions have made over the last 5 or 6 years. When they hired Matt Patricia, when they hired Bob Quinn, when they hired Jim Caldwell, I said, look, the goal is to turn the Lions from the same old Lions into not the same old Lions, and the Lions will be not the same old Lions. The Lions will be the same old Lions until proven otherwise. Because every single time there's a new regime, whether it's at the ownership level because William Clay Ford dies and then Martha takes over and now Martha going to Sheila, or there's a new coach or a GM, everyone has this big spring of optimism and, hey, look, this new coach can get it done and we're going to do the Patriot way, and Jim Caldwell took him to the Super Bowl in Indianapolis. Things are going to change, but they never change. So I've learned as a 35-year-old man that I'm going to assume the Lions are the same old Lions until proven otherwise. They have one win since 1957 when it comes to the playoffs. As sole owner of the team, Martha Ford, in terms of regular season success, was, at least for the first 4 years, one of the most successful owners in Lions history. And then the last 2 years are terrible, but she led them to 0 playoff wins. And so now that her daughter's in charge, at least she's younger. You hope that maybe she'll be interested in speaking to the media more often. She spoke to the media today, and since Martha Ford was in charge, the only time I remember her speaking to the media, and not just behind closed doors, not just a sentence or two after the game, was when they fired Jim Caldwell, and she read a statement, but she's never answered questions. I'm optimistic about Sheila Ford Hamp speaking to the media perhaps once a year, but other than that, in terms of her making monumental changes to put this organization on the right foot forward so they can win division champions, you mentioned winning a Super Bowl, I'll believe it when I see it, and not a second before.
Some of the feedback already coming in. Paul's telling me to turn up my mic, so's DJ. So I tried to do everything that I could here. So maybe Chapman can crank it up. We'll ask him to do that. Your skepticism, if you are a Lions fan, you should be skeptical about everything that they do. So I get that. And the one thing about it is, for a team, you could be a huge fan, but today this is one of the major components. There's really 4 big things when you're talking about a football franchise. You get to your quarterback, you get to your head coach, you talk about your general manager, and you talk about your owner. So, we know who the quarterback's going to be next year. We know that both the general manager and head coach are in a tough spot here. They better ring some kind of bell and go over 500. 9 wins, I would think, at a minimum. But now you're talking about an owner. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to her putting her stamp on the organization. And today, Hamp's stamp was, that she's only been on the job for 4 hours. She didn't have a whole lot to say. Let's hear from her a little bit more often.
Yeah, that'd be a big positive. We also got we were telling you guys on Thursday that there's another way that you can participate besides just putting in your feedback on YouTube and Facebook Live, and that is you can send in a video either via Twitter or on Facebook. And we actually got a video we want to share with you from Jacob, and here is what he had to say about the new ownership with regards to the Detroit Lions.
Steps in as the owner now. She didn't say a specific win total that the Lions need to have in this 2020 season in order for Quinn and Patricia to keep their job. She just said she wants to see an improvement. What do you think that win total needs to be for Quinn and Patricia to keep their job? I personally think it's playoffs or bust.
So there you go, Jacob on Twitter saying playoffs or bust. Dennis,
Playoffs.
what do you think that that win total needs to be for Quinn and Patricia to stick around?
First of all, nice hat, Jacob, and nice video. I like it. Well, I think that the Lions, in some ways, is pure Lions. If they go 9-7, like I'm predicting them to go, and it would be very ironic that Bob Quinn a couple of years ago let Jim Caldwell go, saying that 9-7 wasn't good enough. Ironically, I think 9-7 would be good enough for both him and Patricia to get another year and maybe even a contract extension. Look, they better really look like they're on the right track. It's tough. That's why saying you don't want to put you never want to put a number on it if you're somebody like Sheila Ford Hamp. Vast improvement, what she was saying there, or playoffs, because there's always things that the Lions could be on a great run with 4 games to go, and then Stafford slips on a banana peel, and the next thing you know they lose their last 4 games, and then you're like, well, we said that you had to be in playoff contention. I mean,
and that's what they said in the letter at the end of the year, a playoff contender.
Yeah, I would think that we would be able to see it. Like it would be a real easy. It would be right before our eyes there. Whether we would know whether Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn would be coming back. Hey, maybe a bunch of their draft picks hit. Maybe this defense finally starts coming together and gets a lot of pressure and goes from the 29th, 30th defense in the NFL to the upper half. They get a running game, and they're knocking on the door and swapping blows with both the Pack and the Vikings. I know I'm going on and on and on about it, but I would think that they better get close to 9 or 10 wins and the playoffs, or else these guys should be out. 8-8 and 7-9. How's Sheila Ford Hamp going to sell that?
Well, she can be a typical Lions owner and sell it. That's what she can do. Hey, we won 3 games last year. We won 7 or 8 games this year. We're on the rise. This is the highest number of wins in the Matt Patricia era. That's how she can sell it, as you get that offensive nonsense off the screen. But I'm sticking to the Bob Quinn standard. On January 1st of 2018, on January 1st, 2018, he fired Jim Caldwell because 9 wins wasn't good enough. That's a fireable offense. That's what he said. That's what he said based on his actions. 9 wins is a fireable offense. And then he brought in his boy, his BFF from New England, Matt Patricia, who in 2 seasons combined won 9 games. And after each year, oh yeah, that's good enough to bring him back. Come on back for another year. So I'm going to continue to hold Bob Quinn to his standard, and if he can't get 10 wins, then he's out. And you talked about it should be tangible. We should be able to see it with our eyes. If the Lions go from 6 wins in 2018 and 3 wins in 2019 to 10 wins, meeting the Bob Quinn standard in 2020, we'll be able to see that with our own eyes. But having some victory parade and saying, hey, we're back because we're 500-ish, that's not good enough. And if Sheila Ford Hamp wants to show that she's a different kind of owner, then she can't sit around and say, hey, look at me, I've got my arm around Matt Patricia, my other arm around Bob Quinn. We're 500, we're back, Detroit. And hey, at least we're better than the Tigers, the Red Wings, and Pistons, except this 500 nonsense.
Yeah, being skeptical is very understandable. Let's look at some of the feedback here. First on YouTube. Raj says, who finishes the season with more wins, Michigan or Penn State? He's throwing a college football question out there. I'll answer that one for both of us. Michigan. Keith
That's
says, yeah,
news.
that's better. Good adjustment. He can hear me now. That's good. Keith says a 69-year-old woman replacing a 94-year-old woman. Only the Lions, dude. Only the Lions. You know what I found?
Well, hold up
go
a
ahead.
second.
Go ahead.
If you're the owner of an NFL team, you're not going to be a 30-year-old. You're not going to be, I mean, unless you're Mark Zuckerberg, there aren't many 30 and 40-year-old billionaires. You're going to be some sort of senior citizen. So having a much younger senior citizen, I think, is okay. I wouldn't be surprised if Sheila Ford Hamp is one of the 10 youngest majority owners in the NFL.
I can tell you this: she's the youngest in the NFC North. Heck, Martha Ford wasn't even the oldest owner of the NFC North. That went to Virginia Hallis McCaskey, who's 97 years old. She's down there saying, Martha, what are you hanging it up for already?
You young whippersnapper.
Here's some more of the feedback. Could Bill Cowher have another run as a Lions head coach next year? That's from Paul W. And we hear Coach Cowher's name an awful lot when we're already lining up the coaches for next year. No, I don't think Bill Cowher's ever going to coach.
No, he's done. If Martha Ford's daughter Sheila could get Bill Cowher to come here, then that'd be a huge coup. If he in his introductory press conference says, I had no plans of coming out of retirement, but when Sheila Ford picked up the phone and called me, I could not turn that offer down.
Yep, and Paul also hoping that DeAndre Swift stays away from the injury bug. Yeah, for sure. If you could tell me that Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift would get 16 games in, I could tell you that I would think that the Lions would have close to a top 10 rushing attack in the NFL.
Yeah, well, look, they need more than a top 10 rushing attack. Let's not forget all the top-tier players the Lions have dismissed from their organization over the last couple of years. Hey, we're going to be a better team without Tate, without Harrison, without Slay, without Quandre Diggs. Just get all these good players out of here, and good old Matt Patricia will coach him up. Mr. 3-win Patricia.
Man, I thought I was angry at the Lions, and then when I talk to Chat, but I come off and feel like
I'm not angry. It's just I'm not expecting anything out of them, these dopes. Let's turn the page now to the second chapter.
Yeah, and that stays with the NFL, and it gets to a name that everybody's familiar with, and that's Colin Kaepernick, the commissioner, welcoming a team in the NFL to sign Kaepernick. Donald Trump saying, let's see if he ends up getting signed. Will a team sign him? I know we've got a few videos here to play before we throw out our opinions on this.
Yeah, the first is actually coming from Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, and he spoke about the possibility of teams showing interest in Kaepernick as a backup quarterback.
Got him similar to Kaepernick. If you like your doctors to get a look at him before any signing takes place, I'm going to go back to what you said, Tom. This is a big step forward for having, as ridiculous as it sounds, for having a head coach say that, yes, they would potentially have some interest in just canvassing the league, talking to several different head coaches. It feels like there is far more interest in Colin Kaepernick right now than there really has been, I believe, at any time in the last, 3 or 4 years. I know last year before he had his workout, which went sideways a couple different ways, mainly because of the change of venue and the logistics of it. There was some interest there. It feels like more interest now. Whether or not Colin Kaepernick gets signed, I do not know. But the interest in potentially signing him to be a backup, to compete for a backup job, is very real.
And then, of course, Dennis, you mentioned President Trump. He spoke to St. Clair Broadcasting last week about the possibility of Kaepernick returning to the league. And here is what he said in that exchange.
So when they came out with a statement, I was very disappointed in U.S. soccer. We support U.S. soccer. And now they go out and they say that you can do whatever you want. No, we have to show respect for our flag and for our national anthem.
Secondarily, do you think Colin Kaepernick should get another shot in the NFL?
If he deserves it, he should. If he has the playing ability. His playing wasn't up to snuff. The answer is absolutely I would. As far as kneeling, I would love to see him get another shot, but obviously he has to be able to play well. If he can't play well, I think it would be very unfair.
Mr. President, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
So there you go, a really surprising reversal from President Trump. I wouldn't say it was an endorsement, but at least he was open to the possibility of Kaepernick playing if he was good enough to. I'm surprised by this, but I think it's a no-brainer that Kaepernick should be getting interest. It's about time. I think it's a shame that it took until now, but a team should sign him. I think it's now that he hasn't played in 3 consecutive years, it's unlikely he's going to be handed a starting job. But a backup job, a chance to compete for a starting job, that makes sense. The nation has certainly shifted, at least in the last month or so. There are some like me who have felt all along that he was clearly good enough to play. That nonsense about, if he was good enough, a team would have signed him. This is all about blackballing Kaepernick for being an anthem kneeler. There's no way you could convince me that he wasn't one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL at the end of 2016, and certainly not one of the top 64. He absolutely was. There were some who felt like, all along like me, that what you do during the national anthem should not affect whether you get to play, especially if it's doing something peaceful and quiet like kneeling. And over the last couple of weeks, what have we seen? We've seen Drew Brees flip on anthem kneeling. We've seen owners in the NFL flip on anthem kneeling, or at least seem to. We've seen Roger Goodell flip, and now the president. Last time I checked, President Trump was calling Colin Kaepernick and folks like him a son of a bitch who should be fired. And now he flips from, you're a son of a bitch who should be fired and perhaps deported, to, hey, if he's good enough, he can play. If President Trump is willing to change the way he feels about Kaepernick playing, then I would suspect that Kaepernick will get workouts when the NFL opens itself up to workouts for players, and Kaepernick will get signed.
Yeah, I think he's got a couple things going for him. I agree with you that he was blackballed. I didn't think the teams didn't want a distraction in their locker room over the last couple of years. There would have been throngs of media all around him after every practice talking about kneeling, and just over the last 3 years, that wasn't something that NFL teams wanted to do, obviously. But I think when you look at it now, I think teams are ready for that. And then the other thing, like, I don't think he's a starting quarterback, but like you mentioned, being a top 64 guy, maybe. Although I was skeptical last year when he had his workout. Like, I don't really know what that was all about. Was he really trying to get publicity? Was he really trying to work out for a team? I don't know what he was trying to do there. But considering that the NFL is coming back and they're going to have expanded rosters, and specifically at the quarterback position, you can't have your quarterbacks, if you wake up on Sunday morning, you can't have both Matt Stafford sitting around and his backup, Chase Daniels, both come down and test positive for COVID. This is not just having a third string. You're going to need four. You need 4 quarterbacks, I would think, to feel relatively safe that you might be able to go in and having the quarantine. Now, I'm not saying that he's a 4th-string quarterback, but I am saying that backup-wise, teams have already gone through and they all have their backups. Now, we could argue each one. There's probably more than half of the teams that you could say, yeah, if he wanted to be a backup. I don't know how much money. Does he want to play for the minimum? Jameis Winston's only getting over $1 million. He threw over 5,000 yards last year. And
over 5,000 interceptions.
Well, he had over 30 interceptions, but I don't know. This Kaepernick, we don't know how much money. We don't know what kind of shape he's in. We don't know how much money he wants. I do think that the teams are now going to be willing to bring him in, and with everybody, all the attention, that's going to be a good thing. It's amazing. Over the last 3 years, it would have been a distraction. No, we don't want this. Now it'll be a good thing. But I think also with the advent of expanding the rosters and needing more quarterbacks, if he wants to play football next year, Colin Kaepernick will play football.
Yeah, I think so as well. It was interesting that it was Anthony Lynn, the head coach of the Chargers, who I guess was the source for Ian Rappaport, saying that they were one of the teams that was interested in bringing in Colin Kaepernick because they already have Tyrod Taylor as sort of a stopgap quarterback. And then they just drafted, with I believe the 6th overall pick in the first round, Justin Herbert to be their quarterback of the future. If Kaepernick were to join that team, I think that we could see a 3-way race for the starting job out of training camp, with Tyrod Taylor given the edge to be the starting quarterback, given that he's been playing in the league and he's been alternating between starting and backing up. And then Justin Herbert, if he could just explode out of the gates, perhaps he could get the job right away. But obviously with no OTAs and no mini camp, and who knows what's going to happen with training camp, he's going to be behind the 8 ball. Kaepernick could come in with his experience, with his fresh legs, and really compete with Justin Herbert and Tyrod Taylor right out of the gate for that starting job. I was also looking because I was trying to remember which were the teams that actually saw Colin Kaepernick's workout last year, because it was supposed to be in one spot, then it was moved, and only 6 or 7 teams actually went to see him work out. The Same Old Lions were one of those teams, but the other teams were Philly, Kansas City, Washington, Tennessee, the New York Jets, and San Francisco. So when you look at those teams that actually saw him, Philly has no need after drafting Jalen Hurts. The Chiefs, as a backup, they've got Chad Henne, your boy, Shea Patterson, your boy, and Jordan Taomu or whatever. They could use an upgraded backup quarterback. Washington has Haskins, Alex Smith, and Kyle Allen, but I don't think that Kaepernick, with his interest in race relations, would want to go play for Washington. I don't even like to say their team name. The Titans could be a possibility because Tannehill was only good for a half season and their backups are nobodies. The Jets wouldn't have any interest with Flacco and Darnold. So I think there are a couple of teams out there. You could throw the Lions in there, the Chiefs, the Chargers, and Titans. That could make some sense for Kaepernick.
Yeah, I would add some more. I was running down the teams too, and yeah, I noticed with Henne and Patterson being there. I think the best thing, just like I think for Cam Newton, it's the best thing is wait till they get into the season and wait till a quarterback gets hurt. Like just look at the NFC North. If Nick Foles went down, if I was a Bears fan, would I want Cam Newton or Mitch Trubisky? Easy. If Cousins went down, their backup is Sean Mannion. I would want either Kaepernick. I certainly would want Cam Newton. I would want Cam Newton over Chase Daniels now, and maybe I would want Kaepernick. It depends how long Stafford. If it was just 2 games, I would stay with Daniels, but I would look for those other guys if there was a couple games, and then you just look through some of the other teams here. I looked at the Jags, Gardner Minshew and Mike Glennon. I mean, come on. The Broncos have Drew Lock, but their backup is Jeff Driscoll, the former Lion. And then the Bengals do have Joe Burrow, but his backup is Ryan Finley. I mean, none of those guys, come on, man. There's a spot. There's a spot for
Cincinnati would be kind of crazy because if he went to Cincinnati, there'd be a lot of fans there who would say, hey, I want to see the guy we just drafted number 1 overall who is tearing it up at LSU. But there'd be a lot of fans out there that would say, hey, I've been waiting for years to see Kaepernick. And some people even saying, I'm not even a big fan of football. I just want to see Kaepernick play. I don't think the Bengals would have any desire to bring him in because they want their golden boy to get all the attention.
Yeah, I think the fans, when you pick a guy number 1 overall, you do want to see him. But remember, the Lions had Stafford; they had Dante Culpepper, and he ended up beating him out. But you have these bridge quarterbacks. You don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. Sometimes you get the bridge quarterback out there, and for a couple games before the season goes south, and then you get the rookie in because you don't want to have the burden of the entire franchise on him. Look at, Sam Bradford, where he was with the Cardinals, but Kyler Murray, they ended up putting him out there right away. I didn't want Stafford to start his first game. I didn't want the whole, 0 for 16, the way to the worst franchise in sports being on his back. He was able to shoulder that, though. Shoulder, it's probably a bad word because he ended up getting hurt.
Yeah, he ended up messing up his shoulder, but of course he beat the Browns, and that's, I mean, isn't it sad that he's been in the league 11 years and perhaps his biggest career highlight is beating the Browns in a meaningless season?
No, the 5,000-yard season, he had 3 or 4 comebacks where they're down at
I'm not talking about his
points.
biggest season. I'm talking about like his biggest career highlight. People remember him, getting that final touchdown to beat the Browns in the fourth quarter. Like that's
he was great with all those comebacks a couple of years ago. The game against the Vikings that went in overtime. I mean, he really was great in that game. And in those comebacks against in 2011 against the Raiders, down 28-14 with under 8 minutes to go, he was great in that game against the Cowboys when they back that one in the triple coverage and Calvin came down with it 20-0. They were down to the Vikings at the half. He brought him back, and then against Cam Newton.
What? It was 20-0. He didn't give them a single. He didn't give them a single point in the first half.
Yeah, look, even though that was his best season, I always thought that wasn't going to be sustainable. You can't run that hot and cold.
Yeah.
You can't run that hot. I didn't want to turn this into do you love Matt Stafford or do you hate Matt Stafford?
Yeah.
I don't even know how we got there.
No, yeah, that's because we were talking about backups for Matt Stafford or backup quarterbacks. But let's turn the page now to the third chapter, and for the third chapter we go back to Major League Baseball, and it looks like I thought that by the time we started the show they would officially announce that a deal is done. But
Well, if I can break in, they
Whoa.
have.
Oh.
I have seen the breaking news that they have come to terms on the health portion of which was the final I to be dotted or the T to be crossed. So I just saw that come across the scroll here as I was listening to you.
Okay, well then that's great news. And for those of you who are wondering about what these latest updates have been, we were waiting all day for that. We knew that there was going to be a 60-game season because the MLB owners proposed that. The players said, no, we want 70 games, and they voted down the 60-game schedule 33-5. But Rob Manfred decided that he was going to implement the schedule as the players allowed him to do based on the March agreement and based on Tony Clark saying, just tell us where and when. And we're going to have spring training begin July 1st, which is next week. We're going to have Major League Baseball games begin July 24th, obviously assuming no more coronavirus hurdles. I've been saying all along, I've been saying for weeks that my confidence level is sky high that we're going to have baseball. It was almost always over 90%. It never dropped below 75%. The greedy owners were not stupid, and we're going to have baseball. Now, there are going to be some changes to the season, and not just the length of the season being 60 games. There's going to be DHs. There will not be expanded playoffs, not 16 teams making the playoffs. There's only going to be the 10 teams that we've had for the last several years. The biggest change in the way the game is being played is an extremist Manfred ball change, and that is in extra innings. It looks like they're going to be sticking a man on second base. But Dennis, what do you think about MLB's 60-game season? And who do you think won this battle, the players or the owners?
Well, I think that they both lost. I think they both shot themselves repeatedly in the foot. Like, I'm a diehard. I'm going to watch baseball. I'm glad they're coming back. I'm looking forward to Tiger baseball. I got all my Tiger hats back here. I'll probably put one of them on. They ticked me off these last couple months. The biggest thing is they, and this is part of their extra inning gimmicks and stuff that they're going to do. They're always talking about how they need to trick the game up, shorten it up, because they have to appeal to all of the younger fans out there because the average age is 55 years old. And then they go out, and the stupidest public relations move of all time, they could have had the entire month of July, starting on Independence Day, during a recession, a pandemic, civil unrest. They could have hit the field, and everybody would have been like, man, we love baseball. This is awesome. And instead, there's been nothing but a bunch of backbiting and ridiculous fighting over a couple dimes. So neither of them lost. They both lost. But I tell you this, I am say all that. I'm going to watch, and I'm happy they're coming back. But out of all of this, I know that the next labor agreement is not next year, but it's in 2022. The two guys that are at the head that cannot figure out anything during this time should both be out. Tony Clark should be fired by the Players Union, and Rob Manfred should definitely be out by the owners. I'm not going through these two that can't figure out how to make a deal in these times right now. Those guys should both be out. That's what I'm taking out of it. 3 strikes, they're both out.
Well, look, I'm definitely disappointed that they didn't reach a deal because that should be one of the headlines. It's not that, obviously the biggest headline is baseball is back, but the second biggest headline is deal not reached because they didn't agree to the terms. It was the only thing they agreed on was that the players would be getting their prorated salary, but that's something they agreed upon in March. That's not something they agreed upon this month or last month when they were negotiating once again. So this was just the owners and Rob Manfred saying we're going to have a 60-game season, and I guess they agreed on the health protocols. Look, outside of that, I am happy because we're going to have baseball. There was just too much damage that could have been done by having greed, not the virus get in the way. I think you are right about how they could have had the entire month of July, and now with them starting on July 24th, they're going to have, an entire week, and then the NBA is going to start with 8 games, and then boom, they're going to have the playoffs. Hockey's going to be starting shortly after the NBA starts, I believe. So, look, in terms of who won, I think it was pretty much right down the middle. I don't think any side is going to claim victory, but the players got to keep their prorated salaries. The owners get a shortened season. It's not so short that it looks like a complete joke. I think if they had gone to 48 to 50 games, it would have looked like a complete joke, especially because then the season would have started perhaps after the NBA would have started. In the end, we basically lost about 3 weeks of baseball, which is not ideal. But remember what Dana White said. We played this quote a week or two ago. Dana White, of course, the president of the UFC. He said, when he was asked about Conor McGregor retiring and John Jones wanting to get released from his contract, quote, "Nothing is crazy and nuts right now because everything is crazy and nuts right now." That's kind of how I look at this situation with baseball. I know there are going to be people saying, oh, this is BS. We lost 3 weeks of baseball, and they're arguing about this, they're arguing about that. But nothing is crazy. We don't have any team sports going on in the United States of America right now. And I have a feeling that come the end of July, come almost 1 month to the day from now, when we have baseball, fans will be happy to get back into that routine of 7 o'clock, sitting in front of your TV and watching baseball.
Yeah, the old routine of putting a guy on second base and we go to extra.
Okay,
innings.
no.
I can't handle that.
No,
I mean, I think that's ridiculous. I do like the idea that if you sub for somebody and you go to extra innings, you can put that person back in there. I would like to see, let's just say Miguel Cabrera, if they pinch hit for him in the first couple innings, and they wanted to get him off his feet or something, or even though he's a DH, to bring him back up.
That's not baseball. This is Manfred ball. He's putting all these stupid things in that have nothing to do with baseball. Oh, let's have guys go swapping and back and forth like it's football or basketball, or do a line change. Oh, let's ban shifts potentially. Oh, let's stick a man on second base because instead of having more baseball, think about this. They spend all this time trying to have less baseball while the players are saying more baseball, and in an effort to shorten the length of a game because we don't want to have 15-inning games, we're going to try to stick a man on second base, which that's not a baseball rule at all, just so we can end the game quicker. What's next? Are they going to implement Catholic League rules where 2 strikes you're out and three balls for a walk? It's not baseball. I agree with one thing you said. I don't know about Tony Clark, but Rob Manfred needs to be out because he doesn't even like baseball. If he did like baseball, he wouldn't be trying to change it so much.
Well, he'll be really excited on opening day. Maybe he'll throw the first pitch out and say, at the end of the year, I'm going to be happy to hand out this piece of metal that everybody's going to be playing.
As much as he hates baseball, as much as Rob Manfred hates baseball, I wouldn't be surprised if he throws out the opening pitch while he gets booed and he introduces like a new baseball that's shaped like a football, or shaped like, it's got all sorts of spikes, or it's got a wiffle ball holes into it or something like that.
He's already got a new baseball out there. It flies out like a super ball with the Major League Baseball.
He's gonna have
taking
Nerf
control.
balls maybe.
The baseball's pretty juiced. We do know that. We're getting a lot of feedback in here. We'll have to keep an eye. We're going to ask the people on Facebook if they can hear these upcoming videos. Some were saying that the video volume was too low. But I love being on Facebook here and looking over a guy, Matt Scheller, who I met in the first grade. His wife's checking in on Facebook, and they're watching the show here. So I love to see that. So it's pretty awesome. Joey's in on the NFL stuff, and Paul's saying he misses the minor leagues, West Michigan Whitecaps, and Major League Baseball too. They're not going to have any minor leagues this year, right? That's they're going to have the taxi squad.
I'm not sure what they're doing with the minor leagues. I'll have to look into it. One thing that we were talking about right before the show was that the Tigers were going to be going to Lakeland for spring training, and when I first saw that on Twitter yesterday, I was thinking, This is crazy, and I actually looked at the Polk County, Florida coronavirus numbers because that's where Lakeland is. It's in Polk County. It's the 9th most populated county in Florida, so not a small county. about 2/3 of a million residents, and they've had about 2,000 coronavirus cases, 78 deaths. I mean, it's a hotbed of a state right now. It's a county that sees the numbers popping up, and the only reason I can think for them to go to coronavirus late in Florida for spring training 2.0 is because obviously in spring training you have to play games against other teams, and you can travel by bus and get there in a half hour, an hour, or 2 hours at the most. And if you have spring training elsewhere, it would be, you'd have to take planes to go play these teams. But one big obstacle toward restarting this season is having half the teams go to the coronavirus hotbed of Florida, half go to Arizona and say, by the way, don't get sick.
Yeah, it would be interesting to look at the safety measures and the guidelines that come out that just agreed a few minutes ago on those. But I would have to believe it's going to be a pretty heavy document, just like you look at what the NBA is doing. And the NBA is in a bubble. In baseball, they're outside, which is good for them. But are they going to have the same kind of protocols where they're not going to be able to leave their hotel? They're going to be on some kind of campus. It's not like they're I would imagine that in that pamphlet or book that they're putting out, it's not like you're going to be able to run out and go to B-dubs, at night. It's going to be staying where you're at and then traveling just to and from the game, testing every day. It doesn't sound like it's going to be, a picnic down there in spring training, or it's not a picnic for any of these teams if they're trying to get this thing up and running.
Well, and think about this. A lot of people like going to Florida because of the beaches, and they'll go there 12 months of the year. So that means these hotels are not going to be at 10% capacity. They could be close to packed. So these players could be staying at some of the same hotels, particularly in Florida, that these tourists are in. And if they pass by them, then they could be inhaling Rona. And then they could pass it on to their teammates, and all of a sudden it spreads around. People aren't going to Arizona right now for spring or for vacation. But I wonder, with the temperatures in like the low 100s and 110, are they really going to have spring training in Scottsdale, in Peoria, and everywhere else in Arizona? That would seem dangerous. It's not 80 degrees there right now like it is in March.
Yeah, I can't answer that question, but we do have some feedback coming in. Matt saying play ball. Keith saying the Astros will have to figure out a way to cheat faster in only 60 games. I like that one. That's my favorite feedback of the day, Keith. DJ saying, will African-American players want to play potentially interfering with the Black Lives Matter movement too? Will they want MLB to make some sort of statement or action? And then Brandon saying, will the big-time MLB players sit out this year? I think they have 3 days to figure out whether they're in or not. From what I saw today. What about the BLM, the movement here? What do you think about that? It's a pretty good question.
I don't think there's going to be any players skipping out on playing baseball because of Black Lives Matter. And to be honest, I don't think there's going to be any basketball players except for maybe Dwight Howard skipping out. I think that these guys want to play. They haven't played in a long time. They love their sport, and they can walk and chew gum at the same time. Last show, it was either last show or the show before that, I mentioned Colin Kaepernick because he was walking and chewing gum at the same time back in 2016. He didn't say, I'm going to take off the rest of the 2016 season so I can kneel and protest and raise awareness about how Black Lives Matter and how I want to get rid of police brutality. He played and he fought for his causes. So I would think that these players would do the same thing. They've got social media on the side. They've had the last couple of weeks to do things, and certainly once the season ends, they'll have the opportunity to do things as well. But the vast majority of us and other athletes have found the way to do both.
Yeah, I think of 3 players on the Tigers. Christian Stewart could be somebody that would want to, I don't know, after every game or once a week or something. Does he want to make some statements? Does he want to get out there and, talk about what's going on? I think when these guys have these platforms and there's no media that's going to be at the games, there's going to be no fans that are at the games afterwards. I mean, there's a lot of pre and post game stuff that needs to be filled. I'd like to hear about Christian Stewart's entire life, where he grew up with, all of his experiences. I would think of some other Tigers, Demerit. I know Nico Goodrum, his I've seen a couple different things. He gets a lot of tattoos about his life, and he'll talk about them. So, get these guys out there, talk about their experiences. What was it like in their hometown? What did they experience? Where's their family from? What about their grandparents? Everything that go through that. The more we hear from people, and people that, like younger people and people like us, that we like as athletes and respect, and we get their story, it just makes us feel more like we're one. I would like to hear. I think the Tigers and other teams. Let's just talking about the Tigers here. There's 3 players.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear. Hopefully those guys do want to go out there and just.
Well, and then there's been a lot of talk in recent years about how the number of black players in Major League Baseball is dwindling. So I would assume that whether it's Fox Sports Detroit or some of these other regional sports networks, they're going to try to do whatever it takes to get those players on camera speaking about their situations. And we can't hear Dennis. Dennis, did you turn your microphone off? Dennis, did you turn your microphone off? I don't think Dennis can hear anything that we're saying right now. Dennis, I think you turned your microphone off. Dennis, I think you turned your microphone off. Well, hopefully Dennis can figure out. Leave some messages on the side for Dennis to let him know that it looks like he might have turned his microphone off, because we cannot hear Dennis at the moment, and Dennis can't hear me either. But in the meantime, let's turn the page now to the 4th chapter, as we wait for Dennis to turn his microphone off and get microphone on and get those technical difficulties solved. And in the 4th chapter, we turn to NASCAR, and we had a lot of controversy. Dennis, can you hear me now? Yeah, I don't think Dennis can hear anything that I'm saying. Anyway, in the 4th chapter, you got Bubba Wallace. What the heck is Dennis showing me? Anyway, in the 4th chapter, all right, I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties. Dennis, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Dennis cannot hear me at all. He's waving at me. All right, let's just go to the 4th chapter while we wait to see if Dennis can get his microphone working, because we have not been able to hear him for the last couple of minutes. And in the 4th chapter, we switch over to NASCAR. And look, over the weekend, there was a lot of talk about how NASCAR was going to be continuing to run these races without the Confederate flag. And Bubba Wallace found a noose in his race car garage. And the entire NASCAR community was shocked about that. They were trying to figure out who it was that left the noose there, and they actually got the FBI involved to try to figure out who left the noose in Bubba Wallace's garage. Then they ran a race yesterday, and before the race, they had all these NASCAR drivers and staff members coming out, pit crew members, pushing Bubba Wallace's car. Of course, Bubba Wallace is the only black driver on the NASCAR circuit. So they brought Bubba Wallace to the front of the I think we might be getting Dennis back now. Dennis. Oh my gosh. So they pushed this car out to the front. Now we got Dennis back, I think.
Look at that.
Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah,
We'll just
I
wait.
do hear you.
All right, we'll just wait for your video to kick in, and then we should be good to go. Once again, apologize for the technical difficulties that we've been having. But they pushed this car to the front. It was a very emotional situation for Bubba Wallace, and it seemed like all of NASCAR was behind him. And then you see that during the race, or right before the race, you had a flyover, or I guess you could say one of those airplanes with the banner on the back of it, and it had the racist Confederate flag X with the sign defund NASCAR. Defund NASCAR. And it just went to, I guess, to show you that there are still issues with race in NASCAR. But then we come to find out today that the all the talk about a noose inside of Bubba Wallace's garage, that was a fake. It was fake news because it was a fake news. It was actually a pull handle for his garage door. And so there wasn't anybody that snuck into his garage to put a noose there. But Dennis, after what you've seen in the last 72 hours with the noose, fake news scandal, with the flyover with the Confederate flag, and all that's transpired, and also a parade that took place outside of the Talladega Superspeedway with a bunch of Confederate flag waving pickup truck owners driving by. What do you make of where NASCAR stands now in regards to race relations?
Yeah, well, I think no news was good news for NASCAR, that you didn't actually have somebody going in there and planning it, and it was a mistake. And I know people are going to get all riled up about that on both sides. There's no real reason to get riled up. I mean, the team saw it. They thought it was a noose, and we know that Bubba Wallace is the only black driver in NASCAR. We know the history of NASCAR and their fans and of the sport. So I think it's understandable that they would report that, and then the backlash, and then the support that also was there. So I think all of that's understandable. Now, the one thing that you look at, and I thought it was a great picture. I thought it was a great show of support by the other drivers and the teams there, and the owners to come down there and say, hey, look at Richard Petty a couple of years ago. He was like, get the hell out of the country if you're going to kneel, and he's got a different tune now. But I think the important thing here is not so much supporting Bubba Wallace with the other teams. It's telling the fans of NASCAR, like, hey, you know what? Get the flags out of here. You know what? We're trying to clean this up. And that was never going to happen in 1 week or 1 year. This is going to be a big undertaking for sure. So will they ever be able to do that? I don't know. Last week I was driving back from Florida picking up my mom, and on 75, anybody that's driven, to Florida back and forth, you take 75 all the way down there. 75 north in Georgia, exit 41, there is a gigantic Confederate flag just still flying there right off the expressway, and you just look up there and you're like, man, people are pretty racist to have that up there, like, all considered. And I know people, like, if we were sitting over here, and it's the thing about being proud of being a Southerner. Those days are over with the Confederate flag. I mean, if you're really planting your flag on I'm proud to be a Southerner, go to hell because I'm going to have this flag, well, we're not making any progress.
No, and just to give the people out there some pictures of what was taking place at the Talladega Motor Speedway during the race, before the race, things like that. I want to show you guys what we were talking about in terms of the parade that took place outside of Talladega Motor Speedway. Here's something from an article on USA Today, and you can see a bunch of pickup trucks with, just gigantic Confederate flags, a huge line of them, just rolling by the Talladega Superspeedway to protest NASCAR not allowing Confederate flags there. And I was just thinking, a lot of people consider NASCAR to be a sport. I don't. But could you ever imagine a scene like this, not in Alabama, but what if this street was Woodward Avenue? And they're doing a big parade with Confederate flags going from Highland Park all the way down to like the Joe Louis Fist as folks get ready for a Lions, Tigers, Red Wings, or Pistons game. It would never happen, but that's because in Michigan, we don't appreciate the racist X. And in Michigan, or in football, baseball, basketball, and hockey, fans don't feel comfortable waving that Confederate flag around. But in NASCAR, it's ingrained. It's a part of the sport. It's you know, if you go to a basketball game, you're going to see fans wearing Nike swooshes on their shorts or on their shirts and whatnot. When you go to a NASCAR race, you're going to see the racist Confederate X. And then one other thing that I wanted to bring up from this article was a quote from one of the fans. And I'll put it back up for you. And it says, Teresa Williams of Jacksonville, Alabama, who said her great-grandfather fought for the Confederacy, called the flag a Southern thing. It's about being Southern and being proud. And here's the key phrase. My side lost, but we're still proud. I don't hate anymore. How in the world can you sit there and say, my side lost, but we're still proud. I don't hate anymore. Your side being the Confederates, if your side lost, you're disappointed that your side lost. Like when Penn State plays Ohio State, or you're a Michigan fan, if Penn State plays Michigan, I'm disappointed that my side lost if they lose, and I would wish that the results were reversed and Penn State won. By saying that, she wishes that the Confederates had won so that I could still be enslaved. That's what she's saying. You can't say that you don't hate anyone, but you wish that the Confederates had lost. If you got an ancestor that did something wrong or stood something for something wrong, don't just say, well, I support that racist ancestor that would have had black folks in chains. Criticize that dead ancestor, because if you can criticize someone who's alive who's one of your family members, perhaps you're estranged from a family member, you can sure as heck criticize someone who was so wrong about the way they thought about things that they supported slavery and they wanted to kill American citizens to support slavery. That's what NASCAR is dealing with. Folks like her.
Well, I mean, and it's not just the lady from Alabama. There's a lot of people that have that same kind of sentiment. I think, I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth in the South there, but part of what she's saying, being proud of, her own particular family without even knowing them from, generations before, but then just saying, hey, we're proud because we're from the South. I think that conversation, if you could have that with her saying, so you wish that I was in, chains or something? And like, what would she say there? I mean, that's what we would want to hear. But I think this conversation, not that it's just getting started, but the flags, I was watching a little bit of the news tonight. I say I don't watch it, and then there I am, watching a little bit. As you probably have seen, everybody watching here, the statues going down left and right, all kinds of different things happening here. And we're just, I don't know, it's just scratching the surface, but
it's going to take a while because it's so ingrained. This is not something that was just taken away. Think about one of the first responses that we got to the Confederate flags being taken away was racist Arelli saying he was going to quit. That was one of the first things we saw. And then what do you have after that? Hey, defund NASCAR from the back of a plane. I mean, white supremacists, racist Klansmen, they've had a home at NASCAR events for years. And now they're being told that they can't fly one of their signature symbols. They're not going to go down without a fight.
Well, I think that this, when you come to logic, and it's one of those fallacies where you start talking about one thing at a time, and then people come back and say, everything's going down. We're going to dynamite Jefferson and Washington off of Mount Rushmore. Let's get out there and get the TNT. It's like, well, wait a second. We're just, each situation we need to talk through, and people are having a hard time trying to figure out what needs to come down, what exactly. I'm not. I know we're just talking about the flag here, and I've moved it on to statues, and now Mount Rushmore, and all of these things. These are conversations that aren't going away anytime soon.
No, they're not. Before we turn the page to the 5th chapter, let's get to some more of the feedback.
All right. Hey, good show. I like it when Fithian's mic is muted. It's a better show with Brian.
Yeah, we'll have to put that into our next show. The dentist free chapter.
BCC says the Confederate flag being Southern pride is basically like saying a swastika is German pride.
Bingo! I mean, look, there are some Germans out there who like the swastika, but I think that if you go behind closed doors, they'll say, I don't like Jews. And I think that for most of the folks that have that Confederate flag, they don't like blacks. Like if I were to walk into one of those tailgate parties where half the folks there have a Confederate flag hat, or they had got a big Confederate flag on the back of their pickup truck while they're grilling their hot dogs and brats and all that stuff, they look at me kind of confused, like, wait a second, this is a NASCAR event. Blacks aren't around here, and you see that we've got this anti-black sign here, and I wouldn't be surprised if either in passing, behind my back, or to my face, someone dropped the N-word a couple of times.
Well, I can tell you go through all of the different the streets in Detroit, from Bovine and the different the everything's been named after from so long ago, and trying to decide whether to pull those street signs down and what to go through. I mean, this is something that I'm looking at another feedback here from Brandon, who's asking if we saw the petition to change the name of Columbus to Flavortown. I actually did see that. So it is one of these things. Like there's going to be suggestions, and these are going to be topics that each one, I think we need to deal with each one and say, yeah, okay, what are we really talking about here? The people that are automatically like, we're not changing anything, what's next? Like, oh, let's talk about, what to change in each situation. I do think the Confederate flag, trying to get that out for so long, we have been, we haven't been very sincere as a nation to talk about white people just looking and not thinking about, let's just kind of move on kind of thing. Well, now we're really taking a look at it, and, I'm all right with the pendulum swinging that way.
Yeah, and this is a conversation that's going to continue. It's taken a big turn in the last couple of weeks, but it's going to continue, and it's probably going to go like a lot of these other conversations where there's a wave, and I think a lot of folks that like the Confederate flag are hoping that this wave dies down quickly and not too much is taken away, but then there's going to be another event in a few months or a year or 3 years or whatever that gets more of these conversations to go along, because certainly a few years ago we saw folks trying to take down Confederate statues when we had the nonsense in Charlottesville where they were talking about blood and soil and things like that. So it's never going to be one fell swoop, everything is gone. Racism is gone, whether it's in NASCAR or any other phase of life. It takes time and it takes steps. So this is another step.
Well, you got hate, you got heritage, you got history. How to blend all those together? Try to make you can't make everybody happy. So yeah, that's where we're at. It's this is just getting started, this part.
All right, now let's turn the page to the fifth chapter. It's game time, and we are going to be playing man, woman, or child.
Oh, no.
What are you saying oh no for?
Well, we've had this game a few times, and I haven't been very good at it. That's why.
Oh, we'll see what you do this time. I think last time
I think I did win.
And I think last time you either won or you got two of them right. But
okay.
We'll see what you can do this time. It's very similar to Spartan, Buckeye, or Wolverine. I've got 5 headlines. If Dennis gets 3 right, he wins. And basically, he has to guess if the person in the headline is a man, a woman, or a child. And just so you guys know, as you play along with him, that
yes.
and don't give Dennis any hints. He's not going to cheat and look anyway. But
no, I am. Actually, give me some feedback. I'll go with the feedback.
No, you can't cheat. But
I'm not cheating.
Okay, a man is an adult, 18 or over. A woman is an adult, 18 or over, who's a female. And a child can be a boy or a girl, 17 or younger. So it could be a 17-year-old, could be an infant. First headline. Diner told restaurant is full due to coronavirus rules. Barges in and sits down anyway.
That's a man.
That's a man.
Yes.
Would it change your opinion if you found out that this happened in Australia?
some woman barging into a packed restaurant, a kid. The hard part is it could be a kid there, but I'm going with it. It sounds like a man to me. It sounds like a man. It's a man.
You think a man would be more likely to flip the bird at a waiter and just go sit down where he wants to? And you're dead wrong. The answer is woman. The story says the Sneaky Pickle restaurant in Adelaide, South Australia was following new COVID-19 rules that say a maximum of 75 people can be seated per room. Footage shows a woman walking into the restaurant with her family only to be stopped by the owner. Instead of accepting the need for the reduced seating arrangement, the woman ignored him and proceeded to walk straight in, finding a table for herself. And then the story says the owner posted the video on Instagram, and it's kind of gone viral because 5,000 people have seen the video. So, Dennis, you are 0 for 1.
Kind of like Jamer Candelario when he's in the leadoff spot.
He's 0 for 1 when they write the lineup card out. Second headline.
That's my tiger.
I bet he is. Second headline. Parent remains jailed on charges of lying about daughter's disappearance. Is that parent who's lying a man, a woman, or a child?
Well, come on. You just said whose daughter. You gave it away. That's a woman.
I didn't give it away. I said parent remains jailed on charges of lying about daughter's disappearance. So the parent had a daughter. The daughter disappeared. So
Yeah, I'm going with woman. That's what it sounded like to me.
this parent was charged with 11 counts of lying to authorities, and you think that that person was a woman.
Yep.
Not a man. And you are dead wrong once again. The answer is child. Megan Boswell of Tennessee was accused of lying about the whereabouts of her 15-month-old child, and Megan is a teenager. The story says the child, believed to have gone missing sometime in early December 2019, was found dead inside of a shed at the Boswell family compound in Blountville, Tennessee on March 6th. So, very tragic ending there.
Yeah, 0 for 2, just like Penn State's offense in their first 2 drives in Ann Arbor this year.
Yeah, if they actually play, which is an even bigger question.
Foreshadowing, yeah.
Dennis, you've got to get the next 3 right or you're a loser. Third headline, family looks for grandchild, they say beat Wichita grandma.
Bring some nicer headlines there.
Was that person a man, woman, or child?
Man.
So you think a man is the type of person that would beat up a grandmother. Not a woman, not a child.
I've got to pick one of the 3. Man.
Well, Dennis, you're 0 for 3 because the answer is once again child. It was a 17-year-old from the Wichita area of Kansas. The story says the grandmother had a broken jaw and a concussion after the grandson beat her. The family said that the 17-year-old was on drugs. So, Dennis, 0 for 3 in man, woman, or child. I guess we can all see why you don't like this game because, like a Wolverine against the Buckeyes on the football field, you just didn't have a chance.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're not giving me the other 2 questions because I'm mailing it in now.
Yeah.
All right, well, coming up, thanks for everybody for tuning in here, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or listening to this via podcast. Coming up on Thursday's show, the Michigan State Spartan football team is not getting a lot of love in the prediction category. We'll talk about Mel Tucker's first year and if the prognosticators are onto something or if they're way off. That's coming up on Thursdays, the chapter.
And Dennis will be live for the entire show.
Hopefully.
Yes, we hope so.
He He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, but people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter. Huh. Huh. Huh.
All right,